in people's lives, there's only maybe a half dozen, 7, 8 categories that really matter. Most people, they major in minor things. They focus on stuff that doesn't matter. They know more about this celebrity going in and out of rehab than they do about their own personal development. But I look at and say, if you look at your body, without that, everything else is out the door. You don't want to be richest man in the graveyard. That's not going to do it. If there is energy, if there's vitality, if there's strength, it's going to show up in your relationship. It's going to show up in your business, show up in your life. That's an area you got to master. You can't dabble. It's too important. Emotions are everything. I mean, you got a ton of money, you got everybody loves you, and your primary emotions are pissed off and frustrated, then your life's pissed off and frustrated. It doesn't matter if you got $1 billion or 1 million people loving you. Your life is not great. Relationships. Intimate relationships especially. It's where the most juice in life comes from. It's where the most pain comes from most people. It's worth mastering instead of dabbling. Really looking at what are you going to do with your time and mastering your time. Instead of having a checklist, you cross it all off. You can mistake movement for achievement. I want to squeeze out of that time what matters, that creates value for me and for everyone I care about and love. What about your career or your business and the mastery of that instead of dabbling? Most businesses are dabblers. That's why they don't make it. 96%, any 10-year period of time, 4% make it. That doesn't even mean they're profitable. And it does not mean they're enjoying themselves, all right? Or they're getting anybody else to feel good. Really mastering money so that it's not a question in your life. You can do and be and give and share as much as you want. You're not stressed about it. You live in a place of abundance. And then spiritually, really, I think, now, I don't tell people what to believe spiritually, but I believe that ultimately, whatever you believe, you got to live it. And it should lead to growing and giving. If you're growing, you feel alive. If you're giving, you feel 10 times more alive. And I think if someone can celebrate and give, then that's spiritual state. So to me, those are the areas I look at mastering.
You talk about performance without a purpose. Mm-hmm. What's that?
So, like, for instance, let's say you have no races. Let's say you have no classes, no nothing. There's no purpose in your life. People need to have purpose to get up. They need purpose to perform. You need to get to a point in your life where there's nothing on the docket. There's no 5K. There's no, I'm going to get into school to be this or that and still perform to the highest level. Because what people don't get is one day that thing's going to come up. And if you're not constantly performing without purpose, you're not going to be ready when the time comes. It's this magical thing, purpose, that we're all looking for. But what's funny about it all is that we need these things to perform, but we don't take a second to realize the purpose is always there. The purpose never leaves us because the very purpose is you. You are always the purpose. There may be another purpose, like being a SEAL or going to college or whatever, but the main purpose in life is you. So if you wake up in the morning and you don't want to do something, you don't care enough about yourself. And that's what you need to really research is, man, why am I not doing this for myself? Because that is the number one purpose in life, is to better oneself. So that's the only purpose I fucking need. So the reason I get up every day, even though there's no race or there's no school, or there's nothing in front of me, is because I have pride in myself.
But where do you go to? You wake up on a morning, it's cold, it's wet, it's dark, you've got no cartilage in your knee, you've got shitty shorts, whatever it is that's the issue today.
Keep talking.
You've got these problems, right?
I need you to keep talking about what you were just saying.
It's warm on the couch.
That's
Your
it.
missus says stay in
That's
bed.
it.
It's comfy,
That's
it's cozy.
That's
You've got
it.
work later on. You had an argument last night. You're slightly hungover.
Because I know every motherfucker ain't going to do what I'm going to do. So this is how you level up. That's how you level up. I know there's a whole bunch of people with that right there. That fires me up. That makes me fucking happy, what you just said. That brings joy to my life right there.
Why?
Because I know there's so many people that have the ability and just refuse to get off that couch. Refuse to study a few more hours. Refuse to go deeper, to go further. And that's where I gain the advantage. It's so easy to be great nowadays, my friend, because most people are weak. Most people don't want to go to that extra mile. Most people don't want to find that extra because it sucks. It's miserable. It's lonely.
What you call as human potential is not of any kind of measurable limit. It can go as far as you desire or as far as you have the courage to walk. So when we say human potential, unleashing human potential, it is not about reaching the peak, it is a trajectory. Because what our life is a combination of a certain amount of time and energy. Time is rolling away for all of us at the same pace. If you sit, it rolls away, if you sleep, it rolls away, if you do something, it goes away, if you don't do anything, it goes away. You're happy or miserable, it goes away. Time is running out for all of us. So it's only the energy that you can do different things with. If you bring your energies to a certain level of intensity and possibility, what somebody does in 10 years, you may do it in 1 year. This means if you live here for 100 years, it feels like in people's impact that you have created, it feels like you lived here for 1,000 years, simply because you have managed your life energies in a certain way.
Your brain goes with you and it carries all of the history in the form of memories. All you have from what happened before you is stored in the form of memories, and they're not accurate and they're kind of compressed. So that's all you have about the past. You have no idea in the future, even though your brain tries to predict it all the time. This is what dreams are for, this is what decisions are for. You try to kind of simulate the future and make predictions. You don't know what's going on. All you have is this kind of sliver of reality, which is the present, which is all you have. And you control everything that happens there. The nice thing about the present is that actually it interacts with everything in your brain and you can change things. What we learned in the last 5 years is that memories are different in how they work. And what, if I had to summarize it in one sentence, they change every time you use them. So if you have a memory stored here of what you had for lunch yesterday, and I ask you, what did you have for lunch? You basically open the memory right now and you tell me a story, but whatever happens right now goes into the story and you save it differently. And if I ask you tomorrow what you had for lunch, you'll open the modified version. So every time I ask you the same question, you open a different version, which means that you can actually change the past. You can actually change your experience of things. This is why therapy works, right? You go, your girlfriend breaks up with you, you go to the therapist, she asks you what happened, you tell the story, she intervenes, you save it differently. They ask you a week after, what happened, you tell a different story. After 5 meetings, you have a different version of the reality. And that is powerful, because it means that we control the narrative that we have. We don't really have to be kind of confined to the story that we experience. We can actually change it. This is what the brain is for, to simulate and change and adjust and synthesize better version of life. We can make ourselves happy, we can make bad things look better, we can control things, and it's all by virtue of just telling a story, looking at it differently, and saving it again. It's as simple as that. We have the ability to actually change the story all the time. So learning is one way to do that. Thinking and reflecting about ourselves is another way to do that. Having more experiences allows us to do that. We know all of this now. So suddenly there's kind of essence to this self-help book that we read when we were kids, and we know how to implement that.
Imagine a world where it's just you working solo and you work 12 hours a day every day for like a year. And you're just grinding, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you grind, you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you do that for like a year. And then imagine a different world where you have 4 friends who are also equally grinding in something similar. Friend number 1 makes a mistake on Friday, he teaches the other 4 people. Friend number 2 makes a mistake the next week, teaches everyone. And then like you're all learning from each other's mistakes. You're all constantly studying 24/7 and downloading each other. Like after a year, you're like 2 years ahead of the guy who was just solo.
I'm at the Olympic Games. That's a tough, that's where I think the real truth comes out, because I think there are a lot of people who are very talented who can make it there. There are very few people who can deal with the pressure and the stress that happens when we're there. So that's why I say we had to make sure that we were physically, emotionally, and mentally ready, because I had to be ready to be able to kind of manage my emotions through that week. Yeah, winning a gold medal is absolutely incredible. There's nothing better than standing on the podium listening to your national anthem play after you had just won a gold medal. But for me, I'm somebody who I knew that I had 7 other events after the first day. So I have to throw that in the back of my head. I got to throw that race out. Even though if I, even like in 08, I broke a world record, won gold, won my first gold medal. Like I was like, cool, like things are starting really well. So I have to put that behind me to then get ready for the next race. And on top of that, I have to make sure I'm eating the right amount, I'm sleeping the right amount, my body is as fresh as I can possibly be. So that means sitting in an ice tank, getting massages, getting stretched, all of these small things that end up adding up to the major end result. And that was something that we learned through that process. So for us, we always also tried to compare. Every day is a new challenge, right? Every day is a challenge, is a day that we can prepare ourselves even more. So for us, we would call it putting money into the bank. So at the end of the year, when we had a major international competition, we could withdraw that money that we had saved throughout the year. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you, there were a lot of days where I did not want to get out of bed. And I guarantee you, if I ask the question here, if everybody is excited to get out of bed every single day, if I saw a hand, I'm going to blatantly call you a liar. Because we all know that is far from the truth. But if you have those little small goals, those little small things that get you excited when you don't want to, it's going to make it even better and even easier at the end when you're getting ready for a presentation or the end of the year or this or that, whatever event you're leading up to. It's going to make it so much easier. And I think if you look at the greats in anything that, in any walk of life, the greats do things when they don't always want to. And that's the separation. For me, that's what I've found. Because I can sure as hell tell you that there were days where I hated my coach. There were days where we got in fights, we got in arguments, we couldn't stand what we were doing. I would do things purposely to piss him off, but that's a different story. But, you know, I think that was just really how we worked. Like, he was somebody who was so perfect for me that if I ever would have swam for anybody else, I never would have had the chance to do what I did, because he challenged me in ways and forced my mind to think differently.
Once upon a time, there was a young basketball player who had dreams of becoming one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
My name is Kobe Bryant. I'm 17 years old, with the hunger, the motivation, and the desire to be the best possible basketball player that I could be.
He worked day and night, every day, for years and years and years and years and years. And as time went on, 20 years had passed, and he felt that he had accomplished all that he set out to accomplish. But what he come to realize is that the goal that he set out initially of becoming the greatest of all time was a very fickle one. And what he realized that the most important thing in life is how your career moves and touches those around you, and how it carries forward to the next generation. But he realized that's what makes true greatness. The story would be about transformation of a kid looking inwardly to then growing up and understanding the importance and the power is looking outward.
Control freak is a word people with low standards use to describe people with high standards. You're not a control freak. You just want it done right the first time. You're not anxious. You care. Do not expect mediocre people to support world-class goals.
I think most people feel really lonely when you want something that doesn't currently exist. And so some people call that dreams, some people call that goals, whatever it is. You're trying to pull something from your mind into reality, and you want it done a certain way. And if it's not done that way, it's not what you imagined. And so people on the outside will throw stones and call you names that they think will change your behavior and get you to stop. And the more I have been the person trying to pull things into reality, the more I've tried to weather and build kind of defenses against those things, so that when those stones get hurled at you by being called a control freak, or by saying you micromanage things, or that you have incredibly high standards, the answer is yes, because I want it done right the first time. Because either way, if you have enough will, it's going to get done the way that I want it to get done regardless. And it'll be less painful if we just do it right the first time, because we will still have to do it. And you may have to do it 3 or 4 more times, but eventually you will just succumb to the fact that we're going to do it this way. And I think all of the great things that have happened for humanity have been from one man or woman who had an idea and just wouldn't let people shake it from them.
The standard of right isn't actually that insane when you think about it. It's just right. It's just done without error. And I guess that the margin that some people consider to be right and other people consider to be right just changes.
I'm trying to think of a really good example for this, but like, the level of detail, I mean, it's the difference between a book that gets 10 or 100 5-star reviews and a book that gets 100,000 5-star reviews. And everyone wants a silver bullet, but most of the things that make great products is 100 golden BBs. And so that's one of the things we have is there's no silver bullets, only hundreds of golden BBs. There's just hundreds of tiny little improvements. It's like, how can we look at the can? How can we improve the way it ships? What about the weight? What about the color scheme? How does it sit on the shelves? How are people going to look at it in this market versus this market? Or like, how does this name appear on hats and on shirts and on sites? And what's the RGB, whatever the color scope is here versus there? And it's just 1,000 details that someone who does not care will not put the work to look into because they're trying to check a box rather than to make something that people will love. Or I heard this from, I can't remember who it was from. But basically that the best art is art where the artist makes it for themselves. And where you see commercial work is where a bunch of people are trying to make something for an audience. And so they're trying to like rinse and recycle stuff that actually solves no one's problems because no one is actually the audience. Whereas when you make it for yourself, there's thousands of people just like you who will have the same depth of understanding of it, but it feels selfish in the moment to make something for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, you actually make it for everyone.
But you can be reliably informed that there's some non-insignificant minority of people who also think like you.
Yes.
Who also have the same problems as you, who also have the same fears as you. Yeah. So I'm going through 2 projects at the moment, one being a book and the other being Eutonic, that is nascent. And it's new.
Yeah.
And that means that there's lots more of these small things that are actually quite big things.
Yeah.
But I was telling you before we started about the fact there's a hyphen and there's a hyphen missing between one piece of copy and another piece of copy, but it's printed on 1 million cans.
You're right.
And I think, for fuck's sake. But being concerned about being seen as someone who has too high standards is something that for quite a while I felt ashamed about.
Yeah.
Because you feel like a bother. You feel like you're being unnecessarily, it's not even detail oriented, it's picky.
Cumbersome, yeah.
Yes, laborious.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, probably last year, it took me until last year to realize that not succumbing to stopping doing that is probably one of the only reasons why I've had any success.
I mean, I think for anyone who's listening, if you have that, I would consider it a gift. It makes sense for the majority of people to be opposed to that because you do make more work for everyone else. But the product of that work is so much better. And so if you want the work that you have to last and to be meaningful and make an impact, it comes from 100 golden BBs of 100 particularities, of 100 peculiarities that you are picky about because the whole thing needs to work. And what happens is if you have a big project, lots of people have to get involved, but there still needs to be one vision. And otherwise it looks like a Frankenstein where everyone just checks a box of something they did in the past. They just copy and paste it over. And then it doesn't resonate with anyone because again, they just did it for everyone rather than for the artist. And so using that as a frame has given me permission to be me in an unreasonable world. And so like, I told this last time I was on, but when I did the book launch, I practiced that presentation 3 times a day, every day for 30 days. So I did 100 run-throughs, full length run-throughs. First where I did it out loud and recorded it. Second time where I would watch the recording and then edit in real time and then do it again. And I did that every single day. And so then when I came live and had 500,000 people or whatever, it came out, I think, flawlessly. But people were like, man, you're such a natural at this. It's like, well, I did it 100 times. And so sometimes people even hear 100 and it's just a big number. But when you do 100 repetitions of something, the first 5 times you're like, wow, I'm so much better. But then like the difference between 5 and the next 95 times is what goes from being great to being a masterpiece. And like, it's that next 95 that I think is what makes people world class. And that's where everyone falls off. And that's why most people aren't.
There is this pull, I think, from people who don't have high standards to people who do have high standards to drag them back. It's this like moving back toward the mean is killing the only competitive advantage that you had.
Couldn't agree more. It's conforming, right? It's like people want you to do what they find comfortable, and most things that are like most companies deteriorate when the founder leaves because it happens slowly, because you go from 100 golden BBs to 99 golden BBs, and it doesn't look that different, and then there's 98 golden BBs, and they're like, I don't know, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, you're like, I don't know, it doesn't have the same like magic as what it was, and that's because the art behind it isn't there, because it's not unified anymore. It's not congruent anymore. It's 100 departments making decisions with people copying, pasting things for an audience that doesn't exist, rather than one person who's trying to be satisfied for an ideal that they are trying with all their might to live up to.
I suppose this is one of the important reasons to have a singular figure that is the hub and all of the spokes come off it, because they're the only person that gets to see absolutely everything. And typically that would be the founder. In a podcast, that would be a host. In a solo music band, that would be the lead singer or the songwriter or whatever. They get to see everything. For instance, we've done some episodes before where it's been the night before, and I've been not happy with the color grade because the way that something displays on mobile is slightly different to the way that it displays in Premiere Pro, and it's slightly different to the way that it displays in a 6K videographer's curved screen. I've gone, guys, it's not up to scratch. Well, we're not going to be able to get it in time for the export. We're not going to be able to get it in time to get it uploaded, and then there's checks that go through on YouTube. Right. Like, well, it needs to happen. Like, it just find a way to make this happen. And yeah, that impulse of just actually seeing it as something that you should lean into. Okay, well, it's not. And if you set the standard, and if everybody else gets up to that standard, what it shows is the people who continually push up against that and don't meet that standard, they're just not built for this particular company. They're built for someone else that makes a mediocre product, but they're not built for you, who's making a world-class product.
And I really want to jam down someone's throat right now. The whole, like, don't be a perfectionist, like it's just another word for procrastination. Mm-hmm. I actually think that's complete bullshit. I think that's
my quote.
Is it?
Perfectionism is procrastination masquerading as quality control.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So then I'm gonna put a footnote on it that I think will add context, which is that most people who claim to be perfectionists are not perfectionists. They're actually procrastinating because they're not doing anything. Correct. And so it just is a socially acceptable label, because the real perfectionists feel this sickness where they like want to itch their skin off until the thing's done, but they are trying to get it done. Whereas the perfectionist or the procrastinator uses that to say, like, I'm not sure, I'm just getting it right. But like the person who's an actual perfectionist, one wants to finish and is working every hour of every day on the thing and seeing progress towards it. Because if you don't know how your thing is getting better, you're not a perfectionist, you're just ignorant.
They're also moving toward the goal every single step of the way, as opposed to just sitting back. I had this huge list of things that are not doing the thing. Planning to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Thinking about the thing isn't doing the thing. Getting angry at people on the internet that have already done the thing isn't doing the thing. And there's also people who are perfectionists within the thing that matters most are prepared to see things that are ancillary to that. For instance, you're not absolutely a perfectionist, I'm going to guess, with the short form content that goes out on your Instagram. It's like, this is sawdust, as you call it. This is just, it's extra, right? It's freebie stuff. Look, if we have 1 in 100 videos that have got a typo or the hyphens missing or something like that, all right. But if we're talking about the school announcement release, if there's a fucking typo in that, or if in the video one of the links is broken, or even if one of the links is slightly pixelated, that's something that I can have a problem with. So picking your battles as a perfectionist, I think actually, or someone with high standards, is super important, because you can't have that degree of high standards at absolutely everything. Because if you don't pick your battles, you're not going to make sufficient movement at the velocity you need to actually make progress. So find the areas that are the highest contribution.
Yeah. And
don't compromise on those.
And it's funny you say that, because the way that I immediately reframed that was that the perfectionism was around volume. Is like, that is what we are optimizing towards. And then we can't, because if we knew how people responded ahead of time to content, then we would make things differently than we do. But I, probably like you, am often surprised, pleasantly and sometimes unpleasantly, by the stuff that just grabs hold and then just goes, viral as hell. in content. And so I think part of that is making up for our own ignorance by increasing volume. And so that would be like my reframe on the perfectionism there is like, we know that if we make 10 pieces of content, it is more likely that we will have more people see it than if we try really hard at one. And so we make 10 because the net benefit of the 10 is greater. Correct. And so that's the ideal that we commit to.
Tiago Forte has a fantastic take on this where he talks about perfectionism allows people to sit back and not produce work at a rate required to work out what actually works.
Have you heard the story of the pottery class? Oh, I feel like all right. Wow. This feels like total modern wisdom.
Is this where someone comes in behind and then holds the thing in front?
So there's there's a teacher and he's got 2 classes that he teaches. And one class, he says, the only assignment for this whole semester is that you come back with a perfect clay pot. That's it. That's the assignment. The other class, he says, your objective is to make the most total quantity of clay pots and you'll be measured by how many pots you make. And at the end of the quarter, the pots that came from the team that had to just make sheer volume, not only did they make more pots, but the quality of all of their pots was better compared to the teams that only had to make one. And it just underlines the biggest lesson that I've learned in my life, which is that volume negates luck, is that you can try to be lucky and pick the one perfect thing and try and make it. But if you don't want to try and be lucky, you can just do so much fucking work that you will brute force your way to figuring it out. Like if you do 1,000 podcasts, you'll be pretty fucking good at podcasts, right? But if you try to say, okay, you're brand new and all you have to do is make one perfect podcast. The problem is that you don't have the perspective from which to make a judgment to say what is good, because you have zero data to base anything off of. And so you're basing your idea of a perfect podcast on something that you've literally never done before. And so doing the volume gives you the perspective to then have the best podcast at number 1,000 or 1,001. Anyways, I just thought you'd love the clay pot.
I know that story, but I thought it was photography.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, but no, I don't disagree. And it's finding the thing that is, to try and make this tactical, what is the thing that you don't need to focus on volume today? The goal is not to try and fit 10 podcasts into one set. It's to make this one as good as possible. But if it's shorts or reels or tweets or something, it's lower leverage, it's lower input. Yeah. Just get it out there.
Take a clean sheet of paper and write down goals in today's date, and then write down 10 goals that you would like to accomplish in the next 12 months. Don't worry about 2 years or 10 years or 5 years. Just 10 goals you'd like to accomplish in the next 12 months, and write them in the present tense. Almost like you're submitting an order. And just write down, I earn, I achieve, I weigh, I drive such and such a car, I own. Whatever it happens to be, and the goals will be financial goals, family goals, physical goals, and so on. Write down 10. And then you take this list of 10, and you say, if I had a magic wand, and I could wave this magic wand, and I could have any one goal on my list within 24 hours, which one goal would have the greatest positive impact on my life? Which one goal? And go over it. And usually this will jump out at you. It'll jump out at you like a spider in a horror movie. It'll grab you. And put a circle around that goal. And that's a goal you transfer to a clean sheet of paper, and then you follow the 7 steps. Write it down, set a deadline, make a list of everything you have to do to accomplish it, organize the list into a checklist, take action, and then do something every day. If you'll just do this simple exercise, then you'll all be rich. You'll all be rich. Nothing can stop you but yourself.
Stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring.